Hey, I'm Gloria from Gifts by Gloria, and I'm back again at Camelot Studios, where we will be making this shoe bag using the Illusion collection and 2 of the fresh solids. Winter is here, and I don't like bringing my shoes in a plastic bag, so you're going to learn how to make this really neat item to lug your shoes along. The materials you will need to make this shoe bag is 1 meter for the outside of the bag and the lining, and 1/4 meter for the tie and the channel for the drawstring. To start this project, you need to cut 2 pieces of fabric measuring 20 by 17.5 inches. One will be the lining and one will be the outside of the bag. Once you cut the 17.5 by 20 inch piece of fabric, you will then cut off, and I'm going to show you, a 3.5 inch strip off of that whole rectangle. So basically your strip will measure 3.5 by 17.5 inches, and the smaller piece will measure 14 by 20 inches. You will also need a piece of fabric, contrasting fabric, for the channel of where we're going to put the drawstring. That channel piece should measure 2 inches by 20 inches. The last piece we're going to cut is the drawstring, and that will measure 2.5 inches by 40 inches. We're going to attach the channel fabric that measures 2 inches by 20 inches to the top of the piece that measures 14 by 20. Again, we trimmed off this 3.5 inch piece off of that original rectangle. I'm going to pin this and then I'm going to sew 1/4 inch along over here. Once I sew that 1/4 inch, I'm going to attach the 3.5 inch piece to the other side of the channel. So we're going to go to the sewing machine and I will show you what that looks like. So we're going to sew 1/4 inch starting at the beginning and going all along the line. Now, the back stitching at the beginning, at the end of this seam is extremely important, because there will be an opening to insert the drawstring. So we want to make sure that it's very secure and that the seam does not come undone when we're using the drawstring in the bag. So once again, I'm back stitching at the beginning and at the end. So I sewed all the way across. Now we're going to attach the 3.5 by 20 inch piece to the top. Now that we're back here at the pressing station, we are going to iron this with the steam, of course, because I always say I love steam. And when I press it, I want to make sure, I'm going to flip it over to show you, that your seam is pressed toward the top. Now we are ready to attach the 3.5 by 20 inch strip to the top of the channel. I'm going to place it right sides down, of course, always right sides together, and I'm going to pin it. Make sure our raw edges match, and always using a 1/4 inch seam allowance like all quilters do. So I'm going to sew again from this side to this side, back stitching at the beginning and at the end. And I will show you what we will have after we sew that piece down. As you can see, I attached the top to the channel. I'm showing the back side to show you how I pressed it towards the inside. So this is going to be the outside of the bag. Next, we are going to attach the lining piece to this piece of fabric. So what I'm doing is I'm again attaching the 20 by 17.5 inch piece on top, right sides together. You can see the ends meet. I'm going to pin it. Make sure all those raw edges are meeting. One second, I want to really make sure that it's I'll just use this pin, it's okay. So now I'm going to sew again from this side to this side 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now we're ready to sew. Again, back stitching, very important for this stage of the project. I'm sewing all the way along. I love this illusion fabric. I used different ones for all my different samples so you could see all the different SKUs that are being sold in the line. And back stitching when we reach the end. So now what you're going to have is one, it's a little bit big for the camera to see, but you're going to have one large piece. And we're going to go back, press and pin, and we're almost done. I'm going to press down my seam. I like to press on the wrong side of the fabric so that I really see what I'm doing. So now you have, it's a very large piece, but now you have your lining and the outer part of your bag. Now how we're going to do it is we're going to fold it like, kind of like a book, I guess you can say, making sure we match the seam lines here and here. So I'm going to match my raw edges. And I'm going to get a pen to show you when we sew what we're going to do, a marking pencil rather. So first I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this, and then I'm going to show you exactly where we sew and where we stop sewing. The reason for this is that we have to be able to turn the project right side out. So I'm putting in all these pins. It's so much faster. Now for the purposes of this channel here, I need to keep this area open. So I'm actually going to use pins where I'm going to match the seams. I'll just hold this a little closer so you can see. So I'm matching the seams. And the pins will serve as a reminder to me that I don't want to sew this shut. I want to keep this area open because this is the point of entry for the drawstring. So this will remind me that I'm going to keep it open between here and here. I am not going to sew over that. I will continue pinning my project together, right sides together. Almost done. And it comes together really quickly and beautifully. Now, you need to figure out what your lining is and what your outer fabric is because we need to leave an opening for turning. This part will be my lining. The larger part where we don't have this, the channel is the opening, is the lining, I mean. So I'm going to just lightly draw 2 marks here. I'm leaving about a 3 to 4 inch opening here for turning purposes. When I go to the sewing machine, I'm going to sew all the way here, down, down, down. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to start here. I'm going to back stitch again because that's where the drawstring is going. I'm going to sew all the way along. I'm going to stop at my first marking point, back stitch, leave this open. Start here, back stitch, sew all the way along, here, back stitch, and we're done. And then we could turn the project right side out. So we're ready to sew. 1/4 inch, back stitching always, pulling out your pins as you're sewing along. I've made so many of these for friends, and sometimes I actually personalize it. You could put an initial on the outside, so for the person, they know that that's their bag. Especially in the wintertime when we're wearing boots, it's a good item to have. I keep one folded in my purse so that if I have to take off my take off my boots and I want to store my shoes while I'm going away, I always have it on hand. Again, I'm stopping at that pin. I back stitched and I'm going to end my seam there. I'm going to show you again. I'm leaving it open between here. So I stopped sewing here. I'm going to restart sewing over here. This is a very important part of the project because you want to make sure that you don't sew that channel shut. I'm going to take out my pin. I'm going to lower my needle. Again, back stitch, very important so that your seam doesn't fall apart. And sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the edge. I stopped where the opening was because I need the opening for turning. I'm going to continue. I'm lifting, leaving that 4-inch opening or 3 to 4 inch opening. And I'm going to turn the corner. I'm almost done. So we sewed the entire piece together. And to show you again, where's that opening? The opening is between here and here. I am going to turn the whole bag right side out through that opening. So we're turning this right side out through that 4-inch opening. I'm going to put my hand inside, and as we like to say in the quilting world, I'm going to birth the bag. Some of my friends laugh when I use that expression. So here we go. Look how pretty that fabric is. So nice and lively. I love it, especially in the month of January. So there we have it. Now we're almost done. Here's my opening. I want to repress that closed because I'm going to have to sew that opening shut. So I'm going to take my iron and just quickly press it down. I'm going to press the whole thing down. Again, this opening, you see that it's open for the drawstring. When we make the drawstring, that will be the next thing that we do. Look how pretty that is. So nice how you interchange all these materials together. Beautiful fabrics. And then we'll go back to the machine and we will sew this, where I can't even find the opening. We'll sew this opening shut. I'm going to go back and sew that myself, and I'm going to come back and show you what we do after. So we sewed that opening closed, and now we're ready to put the bag together. So there's a seam over here. I'm not sure if you could see it. There's a seam right over here. I'm going to basically separate the fabric. Just move this out of the way. And I'm going to put the lining fabric inside the bag. As you can see. So, one moment. Just have to adjust it a bit. I use that seam as a guide to know how much should be sticking out of the bag. And again, you could personalize it. You could use iron-on letters. You could sew on a letter, embroider a name, so that person knows that they have their own shoe bag, and it's just such a great gift. I have given these many times to people, and they're always happy with them. So you see, that's the outer part of the bag. It's already assembled, and all we need to do is make that drawstring, trim off these little threads. Okay, so the bag is already ready, and we're going to make that drawstring to insert through this hole. So I'm going to get the drawstring fabric. So we have our 2.5 inch by 40 inch strip for the drawstring. I'll just mention that these bags can be made with any line of fabric, any of the lines of fabric. Camelot has beautiful fabric lines to choose from. So it would really go with anything, any theme. I'm sewing this along the length. I'm folding in half along the length of the fabric. Okay. So there we have our fold line. What are we going to do next? I like to create a point on my drawstring. As you could see, there's a point. Now, how to make that point? I'm going to fold this in towards the folded line, so it kind of looks like a triangle. And I'm going to press that. When I press that, I'm going to fold this part in, raw edge towards the folded edge, raw edge toward the folded edge. Give it another good press. And you're going to do this along the whole entire length of the piece. We're going to continue going along. And once that's done, I'm not going to show you the entire piece, you understand. I'm going to fold this last piece inward like this, and that forms the drawstring. So you're going to do this along the whole length of the fabric. Once that's done, you're going to get a drawstring that looks like this. I sew along the edge here using 1/8 of an inch all the way along the length of the drawstring until I meet the end. So you have this whole piece that's completely sewn and assembled. Now you are ready to thread this drawstring through the bag. Before I actually go and thread the drawstring through the channel, I need to make sure that I seal off this channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew an edge stitch right over here, right against the edge of that channel. So that way the drawstring will not get lost in the bag. I'll show you what I did on the other bag. You can see, I'll show it up close, is I sewed a very close stitch on either side of the turquoise solid. So that will really create the channel. So we're ready now to sew along the channel. I removed part of my machine to create this easy access to sew around the cuff of this bag. I like to start at the sewn seam on the edge, where the entry point is for the drawstring. I'm going to sew 1/8 of an inch or right up against the edge of the channel, sewing all the way along. We're doing it on both sides. So this is side one. And again, this is creating the channel for the drawstring. We are backstitching when we begin and we are backstitching when we end. So we did one stitch line. Now we're going to go and do the second one. Again, starting right up against the edge of that channel fabric. I'm going to backstitch. And I'm sewing all the way along. If you don't do this, again, your drawstring will get lost. So you need to create kind of like a tunnel. And I'm adjusting it so that things stay flat and neat. And we're at the end, so we're going to backstitch very quickly. And our sewing is done. All we need to do is add that drawstring. Before we thread the drawstring through the bag, I'm going to show you the tool that we are going to use, which is called a bodkin. It has a very large eye, and you're able to thread large things through it. So we're going to push that through that needle, and then we are ready to put the bodkin through the bag. Now, I keep so many bodkins on hand in my house because my kids often lose the drawstrings to their sweatshirts and their sweatpants, and it's really a great tool to have for all kind of things around the house. So I went in through the opening, and I'm coming out through the opening. As you could see, I'm going to remove that bodkin. And there you have it. Nice little press again. Here we have our final product, the shoe bag. You put your shoes in here, pull the drawstring. You can tie a beautiful bow if you like. And you're ready to go. See you next time.